Welcome to the Workplace Wellbeing Essential Series. I'm Mari Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Advancing Wellness. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this expert interview where we explore topics that impact employee well-being. My guest today is Megan Burns. Megan is an expert on people-first, customer-centric cultures and how to build them. She helps companies grow faster and thrive longer by adding empathy, trust, and humanity back into customer and employee experiences. For 2 decades, Megan has studied what the world's most beloved, most successful companies do to earn loyalty from the people they serve. While at Forrester Research, she wrote groundbreaking research that shaped the field of experience management, which is now a multi-billion-dollar industry. She has published more than 75 reports on experience management, culture change, executive engagement, balancing customer and business needs, and building strong but flexible governance models. Today, Megan empowers people to transform culture and operations as a speaker, facilitator, and executive coach. Her approach is rooted in behavioral science because it's easier to work with humans than it is to work with human nature than it is to fight it. Megan, welcome. I'm so delighted to get to spend time with you today.
Thanks for having me, Mari. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, let's explore this topic of the intersection of customer engagement and employee engagement, or customer experience and employee experience. Let's start first and we'll circle back through this in our conversation about how this all ties to employee well-being. But let's start with, what is the relationship between customer experience and employee experience?
It's a great question, and one that probably should be simpler to answer than it is. The most basic relationship is in the traditional business model. When you have customers interacting directly with employees face-to-face, then they're having a shared experience. And how the customer perceives that experience influences their loyalty to the company. And then how the employee perceives not only that part of their job, but all of the other parts of their job. Their employee experience is also all the time they spend when they're not dealing with customers. That whole experience shapes their loyalty to the company. So customers are interacting with a company, employees are interacting with a company, and those two sets of experiences influence the two groups' respective loyalties. Sometimes they're directly connected. These days, more and more, they're indirectly connected when you have employees who don't actually work face-to-face with customers, but there's a couple degrees of separation.
So it makes me think that happy employees make happy customers.
Yes. You certainly can't have happy customers without happy employees. Let's put it that way.
Right. So when we think about, what it takes to, so oftentimes I think people focus on the customer first. Like if there was a prioritization, they'd say, oh, customer's always number one. When in reality, it seems that, to me, if you focus on the employees, then the good experience and that customer experience is going to be an end product.
To a certain extent, yes. And I think part of what we have to do is get rid of this idea of one group being number one and another being number two, because it's ultimately about balance. We talk about the customer and employee experiences as being part of an ecosystem, and healthy ecosystems are only healthy when they are in balance, and no one group is getting their needs met more than another. So the idea that there's, one over the other is really a false dichotomy. But in terms of employees, there are a lot of things about the customer's experience that require employees to be able to take somebody else's perspective, right? By definition, if you're an employee in a company, you know more about the industry than a typical customer. And being the ability to be empathetic, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes is something that you can only do when you're not super stressed out. Stress reduces our ability to be empathetic. So from a very core biological perspective, yes, it's true. When employees are happier, they are better able to do the kinds of things that they need to do to listen and understand and take care of customer needs. Happy employees is not always the only thing you need, right? When you get a company big enough, you do need some systems to help well-meaning people coordinate. But yeah, when you have employees who are exhausted or stressed out, they're just not going to be able to do what they need to do, even if they want to.
So let's try to take this link one step further and make that link or the connection between employee experience and well-being.
So we spend a lot of our time at work. So our employee experience is a big chunk of our life. The interesting thing about employee experience is these days, for most people, it doesn't stop when you leave work, right? Your employee experience is also if you're up late worried about something or you're traveling. So that creeping nature of work can affect your sense of overall well-being, your sense that you have enough time for your family and friends. But it's also the fact that you don't check your emotions at the door of things that are going on in your personal life. So your employee experience can be made worse if you're stressed out about something at home and not able to adequately manage that stress. Little things about your coworkers or your boss that might normally roll off your back are really going to start to annoy you and increase tension, right? This is just how human beings work. So an employee's well-being and their ability to keep a good physical and mental resilience really affects their ability to do their job well and to have the kind of interactions and experiences with their colleagues and with customers that you need for the system to be working as a whole. So it's to me, it's inextricably linked. And that's why I think I talk a lot about the fact that companies may not think of employee well-being and stress management as things that would fall under the umbrella of managing customer experience. But there are actually few things that are going to impact customer experience more than your employees' well-being.
Right. Well, so well said. They probably don't make that connection until, some report about some incident with a customer and an employee appears on the front page of the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times.
And even then, there's a quote from the chief marketing officer of, it was a large bank, who said, "Every major mistake I've made in my career, I made because I was tired."
Wow.
And so not necessarily thinking about the fact that it's not just your frontline employees, it's the people who are making decisions and trade-offs all the way up the chain, whose stress levels can absolutely matter at least as much, if not more so, as folks who are interacting directly with customers.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing. I'm curious, when you're working with clients to help them on their customer experience initiatives, how do you create awareness for them about the link with the employee experience and the customer experience and this impact on employee well-being?
There are a couple of different ways we do it. One of the things that's really central to most customer experience programs is a push toward more empathy. And it's usually directed around empathy toward customers. But what we end up doing is, in creating empathy for customers, also creating empathy with all of the people who are in the chain of what's happening to and with that customer. So in big companies, there's a lot of siloing and segmentation, and people just don't know and can't appreciate what happens before and after their piece of the puzzle. So there's a process we use called customer journey mapping, where we map out all of the steps that a customer takes to accomplish their goal. And then we map out all of the parts of the business that they interact with. And very often those people in one part of that have never seen what goes on in another part of that. So we start creating empathy and we start putting some context around things like, I'm not asking you to get back to me in 24 hours because I picked a random number. The customer has an expectation of responsiveness, and here's what else needs to happen. So that connection internally starts to help. But then we also, in these journey maps, there is always a mapping of the thoughts and feelings and the emotions. And we map both the customers and the employees. And I've had more than a few times where the customers were really happy and the employees were really miserable. Oh. And I had someone say to me once, and it's not a company you would ever think had a problem. They said, our customers are happy, but we deliver a great experience in spite of ourselves. They said our employees are heroes, but we force them to be heroes entirely too often because we don't have the operational structure we need. And that was an example of where it was all culture until they got to the point where culture wasn't enough. And so those conversations are often another entry point into, it's great that people are going above and beyond, but how about we give them some support so that that's not as hard to do?
Well, I would think that would be where the, understanding the well-being of the workforce would certainly come into play. Mm-hmm. Wow. Let's talk a little bit about burnout, because we hear about this a lot with, different types of industries and different types of jobs, and the impact that burnout can have on an employee and then, ultimately on the customer.
Yeah, this is a really interesting catch-22 that I've experienced in my own life, right? There are a lot of people, those heroes in that company I was talking about, who care passionately about serving customers. And as expectations have gotten higher and higher about responsiveness and working 24/7, that can lead to too much of a good thing, making employees burn out with all the right intentions. But it still ultimately leads to burnout. And so we have to think about this idea of, burnout is not customer-centric in the long term. It may seem like you're being customer-centric in the short term, but if you're not keeping your employees at a place where they can continue to serve customers, and that's where we get back to that balance. And so especially in the knowledge worker ranks, and I do a lot of, I travel a lot, I work with a lot of people in business to business who travel, we're starting to see things like business class and not necessarily having to buy the cheapest travel airfare through 4 connections. People are recognizing that there's a cost to the exhaustion level that comes with some of those things that they hadn't been factoring in. And so we're starting to see different decisions in terms of how people are designing jobs and expectations and policies so that employees are less likely to burn out even when they have things that are demanding like travel schedules.
Well, so important. And, having experienced this, personally of, came to this career as a result of being a burnt out road warrior, traveling 3,000 or 6,000 miles a week, oftentimes in coach. Believe me, I completely understand why, this is such an important topic.
Yeah. And it's a real sea change for companies to even be having the conversation about the fact that the well-being of their employees is a part of the product or the service that they deliver, and that there's a cost to that. Even I started in experience management 13 years ago, even 5 years ago. We wouldn't have been having those conversations in any serious way, the way we are with executive teams now, which is really promising.
Well, it's very promising. I'm very encouraged by that. Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of what you're seeing on this relationship between the customer experience, employee experience, and well-being?
I think the number one thing that I would add is just a reminder to people that we have control over our own experiences. I work with companies to try to help them structurally think about how are our processes and the way we're set up affecting employee experience. But a lot of the things that you talk about in the well-being space, you as an employee or you as an individual have a lot of skills that you can use to manage your response to even a really stressful situation. And so as people think about this, the onus isn't just on companies, although they certainly have the lion's share of work to do. We have some control in all of this as employees or workers. And so I think we need a combination of change at the corporate level, but also reminding people and empowering people to use the control that they have to manage how they experience the things that are happening to them.
That's a really, really good reminder. Thank you for that. And if our audience wants to learn more about you and the work that you're doing, where can they find you?
Sure. They can find me on LinkedIn. My company name is Experience Enterprises. They can also just email me. My email is megan@exp-ent.com. And would love to continue the conversation about this topic. It's really important.
Thank you so much. It is a very important topic. I'm delighted to have you here today to share your knowledge and experience with us. Thanks again, Megan, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Mari.